Before Rome, before Alexander, before the empires that would define the ancient world, there was Persia. What began as a people living in the shadow of the stronger powers would become a vast imperial force, stretching across continents, built by conquest, held together by strategy, and ultimately tested by the very size of its own ambition. From the fire temples of ancient Persia to the nuclear ambition of the modern day Iran, this is the story of Persia, one of the longest continuous civilizations on earth. Their rise, their rule, their conquest and faith and resistance, and how it all fractured under strain before it fell. Welcome to Learn the History. This is the first installment in the multi-part series exploring the rise and the fall of the Persian Empire, from Cyrus and Darius to Alexander and beyond into the modern era. Long before Persia became a world empire, the Persians were one people among many on the Iranian Plateau. They emerged within a landscape shaped by migration, coexistence, and competition. Indigenous Elamite traditions, Median political strengths, and the difficult geography of the plateau all helped shape the world in which early Persian identity formed. At first, the Persians were not the masters of this region. The Medes dominated much of the northern and western Iran, and the Persians existed under their shadow, subordinates, learning the realities of power, warfare, and kingship from a position below. That early imbalance matters because the Persian Empire was not born from an empty land or a sudden miracle. It was born from a reversal, one where people rose out of subordination to overthrow the power above them. And at the center of that reversal stood one figure, Cyrus, Koresh. Before the 6th century BC, in the Iranian Plateau, before there was an empire, there were tribes. The Persians arrived on the Iranian Plateau as a part of wider Indo-Iranian movement settlement among older populations and within a region already shaped by established political forces. During this time, the Iranian Plateau was dominated by Indo-Iranian religious traditions, polytheistic, nature-oriented systems centered on deities such as Mithra and Anahita, alongside emerging Proto-Zoroastrian beliefs. They lived alongside the Elamite, absorbing influence from older cultures, while to the north, the Medes emerged as the dominant regional power. In this early period, the Persians were not yet imperial masters, but a developing people, settling, adapting, and forming the leadership structures that would later support expansion. Their story began not with supremacy, but with survival in a contested world. The conditions established the foundation of the Persian identity. The Persians developed within a landscape dominated by strong neighbors, especially the Medes, creating the political conditions that would later make revolt both possible and meaningful. And in northern and western Iran, before Cyrus the Great or 553 BCE, Media stood as a major regional force, organized politically, dominant and powerful enough to shape the fate of the neighboring people. The Persians lived under the influence, likely as a subordinate, or an ally or a vassal, learning the mechanics of rule while lacking sovereignty of their own. Median authorities defined the political order of the region and placed Persia in a secondary role. But that subordination also became a kind of apprenticeship. In the shadow of the Median strength, Persia learned what power really looked like. This relationship created the central tension of the early Persian story. This Median supremacy set the stage for Cyrus's rebellion and the first great reversal in Achaemenid history. By 553 BC, Cyrus, originally subordinate of Ansan, rose against Astyages, king of Medes. What followed was more than a rebellion. It was a transfer of power on a regional scale. As Babylonian records suggest, Astyages marched against Cyrus, but his own army turned against him. Betrayal shattered Median cohesion, and the troops handed their king over to the Persian challenger. In that moment, the Persians ceased to be the subject of Median power and became its heirs. In 550 BCE, after the defeat of Astyages, Cyrus marched into Ecbatana, the Median capital, and took control of its royal treasures, symbols, and political centers. But he did not rule as a destroyer alone. He sat on the throne of the defeated king, adopted the royal insignia, preserved Astyages' life, and according to tradition, bound himself to Median legacy through dynastic alliances. Aquidana remained important under Persian rule, and Median elites were not simply eliminated, but many were integrated. Cyrus understood that conquest alone could seize power, but continuity could stabilize it. After 550 BCE, in the Near East, while the victory over Medes brought Cyrus more than prestige, it also brought obligations, enemies, and a new geopolitical reality. By taking Media, he inherited its rivalries with Lydia in the west and Babylon in the south. Former political arrangements collapsed, and Cyrus now stood at the center of the competitive imperial world, shaped by wealth, trade routes, and strategic frontiers. The Persians were no longer one regional force among many. They were now participants in a struggle for Eastern dominance. By the mid-6th century BCE, having broken Median power, Cyrus turned west towards Lydia, one of the richest kingdoms of ancient world. Lydia's wealth, strategic importance, and connections to the Greek world made it impossible to ignore. Its defeat dramatically expanded Persians' resources and influence while bringing the empire into closer contact with cities and coastlines of Anatolia. This was no longer a regional consolidation. It was westward imperial expansion on a grand scale. In 539 BCE, Cyrus captured Babylon, one of the greatest cities of the ancient world, a center of wealth, administration, and prestige. The takeover appeared to have been rapid and, at the least, in relative terms, not centered on destruction of the city. Babylon's systems were preserved, its elites accommodated, and its immense administrative sophistication absorbed into the Persian rule. Cyrus entered not merely as a conqueror, but as a ruler able to present himself as a legitimate successor to the older traditions of the kingship. With Babylon, Persia did not simply gain territory, it gained mantle of world empire. After the conquest, Cyrus did not impose any rigidity in either religious orthodoxy or cultural practices. Instead, he ruled through pragmatic tolerance. The famous Cyrus Cylinder, often labeled as the first bill of human rights, records his restoration of temples and repatriation of displaced people. While modern interpretations, including its promotion by the United Nations, emphasize human rights, scholars caution that it reflects Mesopotamian royal traditions rather than modern rights discourse. But in 530 BCE, tragedy struck Persian Empire in Central Asia. It was Korash. The founder of the empire died far from its core during a campaign in Central Asia. His death closed the first great chapter of Persian history. He left behind a vast empire, forged through conquest, diplomacy, and continuity. But one still young, still fragile, and still dependent on the strength of its rulers. The founder had built the imperial frame. Now the question was whether it could survive him. An empire built by founders can rise quickly. Surviving that founder is hard. The throne now passed to Cambyses, and with him, Persia entered its first age of succession, expansion, and crisis. Stay tuned for the next installment where we explore Cambyses' inheritance of Persian Empire and how it shaped the empire's path forward.